I'm Gillian Glegg, and I'm Associate Professor at the University of Plymouth.
I'm Mike Perring. I'm at the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology.
I'm Louise Denning. I work for Natural England, and I'm a Senior Coastal Habitat Specialist.
Very nice to meet you all. The project that you'll be supervising is titled Trade-offs or Win-Wins, Perception and Reality in Salt Marsh Conservation for Biodiversity and Sustainable Environmental Management. Could you tell me a little bit more about where the idea for this project came from?
So this piece of work came about following Natural England commissioned evidence literature review that we got CEH to undertake for us. And when they assessed the evidence, there was a lot of evidence gaps. And so having had some conversations with Mike and the team, we felt that it would be a good chance to expand that through a PhD.
This project is using social science techniques to explore what people know and what they perceive about their impacts on the natural environment and how they can change, whether they can change their behaviour in order to improve and enable conservation of salt marshes in particular, but the natural environment in general.
I suppose my big focus, and what I can bring to the project is that I'm really interested in, obviously, coastal habitats and salt marsh particularly, how the nutrient enrichment might affect the quality and the function of those habitats in terms of species composition, above and below ground biomass, thinking about zonation shifts, so how the ecology might influence the function. And then you can bring that into sort of things around ecosystem services. So, for example, we know that salt marshes are really important coastal flood protection measures. And so we're interested in, if you have huge nutrient enrichments going into systems and there's smothering of the plants, how that affects the background, below ground biomass, and then can affect, the fragmentation of the salt marsh and reduce the flood protection measures.
And in looking at how we actually secure kind of sustainable management of resources, it's really, really important to have stakeholder buy-in and also understand the perceptions of stakeholders for these different habitats. And so we approached Jill for her expertise and to see whether she, would be interested in the projects as well.
For me, my interest is in marine pollution, but of course all pollution comes from the land and from human activities, and most of those are up in catchments. And so I'm really interested in how we can manage pollution that comes from catchments. And one of the things that's really important about that is what happens in areas like estuaries and salt marshes. And so it all sort of fits together very nicely for me to think about, well, how can we talk to people within the catchment about what they're doing? Can they change what they're doing in order to improve the conservation of other aspects of the estuary?
So part of the idea around the PhD is to inform the water quality and nutrient neutrality debate, which is definitely a hot topic of sort of in politics and in the media at the moment. And I think it also feeds into the wider conversations about nature-based solutions and ecosystem services. So that they're all areas of work that are expanding at the moment, and lots of information being gathered. So it's very timely.
So my interest is in the catchment and in the social science elements of the project. And my background is actually as a chemist, but in order to look at marine pollution and to look at human activities and how they impact the natural environment, it's really important to find out what people think and what people know and what will influence the way in which they behave. And so that's the element that I'm going to be most interested in.
Yes, where I have a kind of background in ecological survey and understanding how environmental change affects ecosystems. And I'm also very interested in how biodiversity affects ecosystem function. So I have a background in both those aspects, including doing, as I say, ecological surveys and experimental field experiments and lab experiments to understand that. And importantly, I've got this background in restoration ecology as well. So that kind of understanding of, again, of how people are so important in the solutions that we're trying to find to improve the natural environment and the world in which we live.
I think I can bring the plant identification and obviously the things like helping with survey arrangements. I work for Natural England, so we give all the permissions for access to sites. So yeah, I can also maybe tie it into what the government's looking at the moment. So work for DEFRA, so we're feeding up the chain, if that makes sense, on policy with a 25-year environment plan and things with water quality and that. So yeah, hopefully bring all those sort of areas to the project.
Obviously, the project is interdisciplinary. We don't expect to find a candidate that has got all the skills right at the start. So we're looking probably for someone that maybe has a background in ecology, or it could be someone that has a background in geography or catchments. So lots of different possible backgrounds would be suitable. Because we will be able to train people in the other skills that we're interested in. So, for example, in the social science skills or in the laboratory skills, if we need those. We do think it would be a good idea for someone to have experience in the field, but we're really open to quite a wide range of backgrounds with some science and social science involved. But it's got to be a scientific background.
So the idea would be to be trying to select certain case study areas to understand how nutrients has affected the salt marshes in these different areas. So that was one of the knowledge gaps that we found in the evidence review, was that we really don't understand how context affects the salt marsh biodiversity relationships and the zonation that Louise was talking about as well. It's also really important to be thinking about how the questionnaire would be developed, approaching the different stakeholder groups. There will also be opportunities to be located at UKCH as well as at Plymouth. And I think I could probably hand over to Louise to discuss a bit more about opportunities at Natural England as well.
We've held placement students before, so usually just over for a couple of months or over the summer. Obviously, depending where they're based, we work nationally. So, we're happy. We could probably have somebody going in to work with us to find out a little bit more about what we do and build those connections. As I said, we work really closely with our colleagues in DEFRA and the Environment Agency. And I know they're really interested in this area of research and work as well. So, there's a really good opportunity for building a candidates network, do some collaboration and find out about some of the areas of, where they might go afterwards as well.
As Louise has just mentioned, there is an opportunity in this project to develop lots of contacts with particularly the sort of government agencies, things like Natural England, the Environment Agency, and maybe even DEFRA. So I think that there is this role, the project certainly based around the sorts of needs of those organisations, the needs for managing and conserving salt marshes. So that's an important sort of place we think people might be able to go on when they've completed the PhD. But of course, they will also be trained in a way that they can tackle all sorts of other jobs, including things like consultancy work, other research posts. There's a wide range of things that they would be able to do into the conservation sector as well. Those sorts of organisations would really be interested in the sorts of skills that we've got here, which are those interdisciplinary skills, looking at how can we manage what people do, and how does that then influence what happens in the marine environment or in the natural environment in general. So they'll have a very good perspective of environmental management and policy, I think.
If people are interested in pursuing the studies further, or there'll also be the kind of what you might perceive as the more traditional academic research route as well, or teaching, and you'll undoubtedly gain transferable skills in those aspects as well through the course of the project.
in the first instance, yes, I would be very happy to speak to them. And then if I think that they need to speak to Mike and Louise, I can also always pass them on to those. So they can email me